Remember the first time you saw Darth Vader? Angry, cold, evil. He walked like he owned the galaxy, spoke like a machine, killed without blinking, or at least we assumed he didn't. Hard to tell with the mask, you know. Anyway, you get the point. But what if I told you that's not who he really was? Because beneath the armor, behind the mask, was someone terrified. Not of war, not of death, but of loss. I know. It's hard to picture Darth Vader as scared, especially when you remember him standing over Obi-Wan, watching him disappear into thin air. But that's the thing about fear. It doesn't always look like panic. Sometimes it looks like silence. Sometimes it looks like someone trying to kill the past, hoping it'll take the pain with it. Let me show you how fear, not hatred, was the real force behind him. In this video, we're going inside the mind of Darth Vader to trace the fear that consumed him, the people he betrayed, and the tragedy that turned Anakin Skywalker into the galaxy's most feared monster. The thing is, I don't think Anakin ever stood a real chance. Not with the system he was thrown into. The Jedi basically gave him a lightsaber and said, "Welcome to the monk cult." No fear, no anger, no attachments, no feelings, really. And keep in mind, this is a kid who just left his mother behind in slavery. Imagine telling a 9-year-old who's never known safety, try not to care too much. It leads to suffering. That's not guidance. That's a recipe for emotional implosion. The Jedi Order preached self-control like ancient Stoics or Spartan warriors. Noble on paper, but when grief came knocking, their answer was, don't feel it. Meanwhile, the Sith, the Jedi's ancient opposites, did the, well, exact opposite. They embraced fear, passion, and anger. They believed those emotions were powerful. Not something to suppress, but something to use. So Anakin wasn't caught between good and evil. He was caught between two extreme philosophies that both taught him how to fight, but never how to feel. And eventually one of them turned him into a machine. You see, Anakin Skywalker wasn't born into peace. He was born into chains. Raised as a slave on Tatooine by a single mother with no father, no protection, and no escape. Anakin's earliest memories weren't of freedom or family dinners. They were of survival, of watching his mother try to shield him from a galaxy that saw them both as property. And from the very beginning, one lesson burned itself into his psyche. The people you love can be taken from you. And worse, you might be powerless to stop it. That fear didn't go away when the Jedi arrived. It just got buried under robes and rules. They didn't rescue a broken child. They recruited one. The Jedi Council looked at Anakin and saw potential, but they didn't see the damage. They gave him a new path, a new identity. Jedi robes, lightsaber, the whole chosen one package. But they never really saw the scars underneath. They gave him no tools to process grief, no space to mourn the life he'd been ripped from. Instead, they told him what all Jedi are told. Don't get attached. Let go. Bury your fear. Detach from love. That's far from emotional training. That's emotional suppression. But Anakin didn't want to let go. He wanted to hold on. To his mother, to Padme, to anyone who made the galaxy feel less cold. So when he dreamed his mother was in pain, he did what any terrified child would do. He ran back home. He disobeyed orders, broke protocol, and returned to Tatooine. But it was too late. She died in his arms. And in that single moment, the fear he'd carried for years became something else. Not just emotion, not just trauma, proof. Proof that love couldn't protect anyone. That doing the right thing didn't guarantee safety. And that sometimes the rules get you killed. That was the first real fracture, not in the Republic or in the Jedi, but in Anakin himself. And it was only the beginning. I've always thought of Anakin as that guy who peaked in his early 20s. Like, imagine being called the Chosen One before you hit puberty. It's no wonder he cracked. And by the time he became a Jedi Knight, he had it all on paper. Combat skills, the coolest lightsaber twirls, and a secret wife who happened to be a senator. Not bad for a former slave from a dustball planet. But inside, he was coming apart. See, Anakin never stopped trying to hold the galaxy together with clenched fists. After losing his mother, he swore he'd never lose Padme. And that's where things got dangerous. Not because loving her was wrong, but because fearing her death became his full-time job. He started having visions. Nightmares where she dies in childbirth. And instead of opening up to the Jedi, who treated emotions like a malfunction to fix, Anakin turned to the one person who always made time for him, Chancellor Palpatine. Palpatine was a mentor to Anakin, a guide, the closest thing to a father he ever had. Because when you grow up without a dad, and your Jedi masters tell you not to form attachments, you start clinging to the only adult who actually listens. And Palpatine listened. But he didn't do it out of kindness. He did it because he saw the cracks in Anakin before anyone else. And instead of helping him heal, he slipped in through those cracks and widened them. And let's be honest, if you had a medieval emperor whispering in your ear 24/7, calling you special, misunderstood, and the only one strong enough to fix the system, your ego might get a little weird too. Palpatine was basically grooming Anakin, slowly replacing Jedi wisdom with Sith logic. Like some twisted life coach from hell. Emotions aren't bad, Anakin. Fear makes you powerful. Anger makes you unstoppable. It's the emotional version of Napoleon crowning himself emperor. Once power tastes sweet, you convince yourself it was destiny. What makes this all so tragic isn't that Anakin was fooled. It's that he wanted to believe. Because in his nightmares, Padme, his wife, his anchor, was dying in childbirth. And he couldn't go through that again. Not after losing his mother, so he clung to the promise of saving her. But maybe part of him wasn't trying to stop the loss. Maybe he was just trying to make himself cold enough to survive it. Like if he could embrace the darkness early, it wouldn't hurt as much when the light was gone. That's the trap. The tighter he held onto his vision of a perfect future, the faster it slipped through his fingers. And when Anakin finally reached out, when he told the Jedi he was afraid, they didn't help. They lectured him. They told him to let go of everything he feared to lose.
Train yourself to let go of everything you fear to lose.
As if that was even possible. Then they turned around and asked him to spy on the only man who actually listened to him.
The Council wants you to report on all the Chancellor's dealings. They want to know what he's up to.
They want me to spy on the Chancellor?
Chancellor Palpatine. No comfort, no guidance, just rules, mistrust, and silence. And that's when the fear twisted into something darker. Because if the people who were supposed to protect you only see you as a threat or a tool, what choice do you really have? After that, the divide only grew. Palpatine leaned in closer, whispering exactly what Anakin needed to hear. That he could save Padme.
Power to save Padme.
That he was special. That the Jedi were holding him back. And maybe most dangerously, he listened. Not just as a mentor, but like a father figure. The only one who never turned away. The Jedi questioned his loyalty, kept him at arm's length, even asked him to spy on the only man who ever gave him a voice. So when Palpatine finally revealed himself as a Sith,
my mentor taught me everything about the Force, even the nature of the dark side.
And the Jedi demanded his execution. Anakin didn't turn on Palpatine. He turned on the Jedi Order. Because in his eyes, they were the betrayers. And the man who lied to him still felt like the only one left who understood. By the time Anakin walked into the Jedi Temple with a red lightsaber and a 1,000-yard stare, the man was already gone. The Anakin we knew, the one who joked, rebelled, loved too hard, and wanted to do the right thing, had been swallowed by something colder. And to be honest, the more I think about Anakin Skywalker's fall, the more it makes sense. Imagine spending your whole life being told to bury every emotion, to silence every fear, every attachment. Then one day, someone comes along, someone powerful, manipulative, and disturbingly calm, and says, No, fear is good. Let it guide you. That's what Palpatine did. He offered Anakin more than power.
Can you achieve a power greater than any Jedi?
He offered him permission. Permission to feel. Permission to break the rules. That's how the dark side works. Not by screaming in your face, but by whispering exactly what you already want to believe. At that point, Anakin didn't turn evil because he loved violence. He turned because he thought he was protecting the only thing left that mattered, Padme. He believed that if he just gave in, if he just surrendered to the dark side, he could save her. And if you've ever seen a desperate man gamble everything on a terrible decision, welcome to history. History's full of men like Anakin, leaders who thought one terrible decision might stop the bleeding. Caesar crossing the Rubicon, Nixon covering up Watergate, Napoleon marching into Russia. It never saves the world. It just sets it on fire a little slower. The Jedi became enemies. Obi-Wan became a threat. And anyone who stood in Anakin's way, and even his children, were treated like pawns in a collapsing chessboard. All while the one person he claimed to be protecting, Padme, was drifting further from him. And the family he could have had, Luke, Leia, never even got the chance to know who he really was. The man didn't need more power, he needed therapy. But the galaxy doesn't hand out therapists to future Sith Lords. It hands out sabers, titles, and trauma. And when it all came crashing down, when Padme still died, when the Empire rose, and when Anakin was left burned and broken on the lava banks of Mustafar, the prophecy wasn't just broken, so was he. That's when Darth Vader was born, not in a moment of triumph, but in a moment of loss. Not because he was strong, but because he was afraid he'd lost everything. And that fear never left. It just got buried under armor, silence, and orders from a master he no longer trusted.
Can you hear me?
Because in the end, even Palpatine, the man who promised to save Padme, was just another lie. And years later, when Anakin saw him torturing his own son, Luke, he didn't hesitate. That was the final betrayal. The Sith Lord who had killed for love would die for it too. There's a reason Darth Vader sticks with us. It's not just the suit, or the voice, or the hallway scenes where he slices through rebels like they're made of butter. It's because deep down, we recognize him. He's the man who made every wrong decision for the right reason. The person who tried to control the future so he wouldn't lose the people he loved, and ended up losing himself in the process. And sure, most of us aren't force-wielding space generals with lava scars, but the pattern is universal. We've all had moments where fear whispered in our ears and said, just do this, compromise here, protect yourself. And then, like Anakin, we look up and barely recognize who we've become. That's what makes Vader terrifying. Not the armor, the mirror. He shows us what happens when emotion is buried too deep, when power becomes a substitute for peace, and when love turns into control. He's not just a villain, he's a warning. A reminder that the scariest monsters in the galaxy didn't start out that way. They were made, slowly, fearfully, one bad choice at a time. That's why decades later his story still matters. Because it's not just science fiction, it's human. Let me know your thoughts on Darth Vader's story in the comments below. And if I missed anything, don't hesitate to call it out. Also, who should we dive into next? Drop your villain requests down there.